Hello everyone, it's Dr. Foss here. Welcome to my office on campus for our first lecture, in which we're just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we've been talking about this semester. All right, let me share my screen here. And let's get going. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about a term that I've heard a lot, which is incredibly problematic, right? And that's the term the media. You usually hear it in a negative way, often in online messages or social media posts, the media to mean all media, as if all media messages are created in this one homogenized pool and then widely distributed, right? The reason why that we have an issue with this is that it's just not true. It's a false way of setting up what media messages are, just like if we said the people to refer to all the people in the world. So we're going to throw out that term, the media, not going to say the media anymore. Instead, what we need to do is we need to be specific. What are we talking about? What kind of media outlets are we talking about? Are we talking about fiction or entertainment? Are we talking about news outlets? Are we talking about industry produced or citizen produced? All of that is going to influence what kind of media messages we're even looking at. So what's considered part of media? First of all, media is a plural term, so we want to make sure that we always use it in the plural form. If we want the singular, we're going to use the word medium. We're not going to use the word mediums unless we're ordering pizza or maybe creating art. But for this class and for any time we're going to talk about mass communication industries or citizen produced messages, we're talking about media as plural, medium as the singular. Two types of messages. We're going to think about industry produced messages, which means mainstream media messages like books, magazines, newspapers, radio programs, recorded music, films, TV shows, video games, websites, social media posts that are created for media corporations. Right? So for example, a news organization that then produces messages that have gone through a gatekeeping process before they're distributed. Right? We're going to separate that out from citizen produced books, magazines, and all of the different types I just named, meaning that as we know, it's really easy for regular people to self-publish or to write blog posts or post YouTube or TikTok videos. Right? That's going to be different than industry-produced messages, particularly for gatekeeping, sometimes for aesthetics and quality, but also for even kind of role and function within society. And then we can also think about kind of a mix of both. For example, if a New York Times article goes live on the website, regular people can certainly comment below, right? And that's going to be a little bit different than, for example, somebody just blogs about the same topic. We can also see the same topic carried through different types of media channels and even who's producing the messages. For example, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, my favorite Harry Potter book and movie. We saw that as a book, as a movie. Certainly the cast did radio and TV interviews, interviews online. And then we also saw regular people blog back then and then continue to blog and talk about these on social media, on Reddit, on BuzzFeed, on a lot of different ways that we've had for people to talk about these products that were originally created in the form of a book. All right. This is going to be kind of an old school way to classify content and distribution. But I want us to, first of all, define what we traditionally have meant by media, meaning the culture industries that create and distribute products through specific channels. Right? And how did this used to work and how this works now is evolving. But we can think about how television programs were the content and are the content, right? So shows like Grey's Anatomy would be content. And then how do we access those shows? Well, we could traditionally through TV sets, but also of course through streaming video channels, certainly through, your phone and other ways, other devices to access it, right? We can think about how we get movies, which are the content themselves. So like The Quiet Place 2 when it finally comes out, which I'm really looking forward to. That's a film. And then how do we access it? Well, it used to be through movie theaters and hopefully again someday. TV sets, DVD players, streaming channels, devices, a lot of different ways to access films. Right? Recorded music would be the content, for example, songs that we enjoy. And how do we access it? A lot of different ways, and this has evolved over time. Same with video games, through gaming systems, websites, through the internet. books, and then books accessed digitally or through a book itself, a physical book. Magazines, same thing. Newspapers, again, having the multiple ways besides print newspapers, but also having digital access. All right. So why is it important for us to study media products, to study media content, to study media distribution, to study media economics, a lot of these different areas? Well, first of all, we can think about why we care. Why does it matter what we know and how we can critically analyze media products? There are a number of argued benefits. Right? One is that media products give us common ground. Right? They bring people together. They give you something to talk about. If you may not know anything else about a person, you can probably guess that they might have been exposed to especially something really popular. And we can guess it by age group a little bit. For example, you might bring up someone who's really popular on TikTok to a teenage or young adult audience. And that might be a little bit different than bringing up someone who's popular on the Golf Channel to, and I'm totally going to stereotype here, a senior citizen who's into golf, right? But we do make these kind of guesses, but it gives us common ground so that we have things to talk about. Right? It helps us to connect and build community. I think that we've seen this more than ever in the last few months. We can think about how Some Good News, John Krasinski, helped bring people together and kind of brighten days through YouTube. When we were all social distancing. We can think about how different videos go viral, like the principal who made his can't touch this video with Lysol. Thinking about different ways for us, even if we can't be physically near other people, we can start to build community and reinforce community. Media products also reflect and shape cultural moments. Right? So what's happening right now and the media products that are created right now is going to be very different than a time in which even a year ago of what's going on, right? And it shapes who we are and our perceptions of the world, right? Basic functions of all media products: to inform, to persuade, and to entertain, sometimes interchangeably, sometimes at the same time, sometimes different functions for different audiences. So why are media products important? Because they do keep us informed. They can persuade us to think different ways on different issues, and certainly we can use them for entertainment and leisure. Then we consider media, and I am using it as an entity, but media collectively come together to serve as a primary institution in society, as kind of its own thing that can keep watch on and check on the government, if we want to think about it from a kind of a responsibility model. We can think about how media can influence us, or media products together can influence us to behave in different ways. Tell us when we have to quarantine, tell us when it's time to start reopening and rejoining society, right? This demonstrated power of media is what I'm getting at. And then we can think about how media products improve our quality of life. And I'm not just thinking about whatever video game you like to do when you want to waste time, or social media that you spend a bunch of time consuming. I'm thinking about overall. So think about where we would be if we did not have media messages. And this is something that we'll keep talking about. But if we did not have technology, where would you live? Where would your family live? What would you eat? Would you have a job? Would you be able to go to school? And again, not just thinking about if someone took away your phone for the day, but thinking about how we've evolved as society. We can look at life expectancy, for example, and how it's risen significantly in many countries if we look from 1900 to now. Right? And all those developments that never would have happened if we had a way to both capture messages and capture information and then distribute it to other people. But, of course, there are also argued negative qualities, right? And again, I use the word argued because I think that some of these at least are debatable, or we can think about exceptions, but we can certainly think about at least the different negative aspects. Homogenized culture, meaning that certainly as we have waves of popularity and widely distributed products, and especially with advertising and big corporations, it can kind of push out smaller businesses, for example, or make people all follow a particular trend, for example, in fashion, pushing out kind of individuality. Right? This is one argued negative quality. Or how, for example, the advertising and branding of particular restaurants, chain restaurants, can wipe out smaller restaurants. why you might see a KFC if you go to Prague, for example, right? And here's a big one for another argued negative quality, the ability to pass and distribute misinformation presented as truth. And I would say this is especially problematic now when it's so easy for people to distribute information without checking to see if the source is legitimate. For example, I have the wise friend meme that circulated a few months ago, kind of reminding people about why people shouldn't gather in crowds, using the influenza pandemic in 1918 as an example. Now, this is widely problematic because this image actually was not taken at this time, and it also wasn't taken, it wasn't, I think it was credited, and I actually wrote a whole blog post about why this was inaccurate, which everybody can check out, right? But it doesn't reflect it. And in using kind of wise friend is a good tip off that it might be false information. The photo doesn't match the information, and the information does not match what actually happened in the moment. All right, like I said, if you want to know more about that, definitely check out my blog, profkatiefoss.com, right? But this easy ability to pass information, especially when people don't check it out for themselves, is how we get into trouble, right? And certainly we've seen that with particular news organizations as well, but I would say the biggest issue with misinformation is spread through consumers who don't check sources, right? Then we can also think about on a larger scale how media messages can distort what we consider reality, what actually happened, what are the different experiences by only focusing on one or two experiences, and perpetuate stereotypes or broad generalizations about people based on one or two individuals, all right? Falsely perpetuating these stereotypes. Right? We can think about how media messages, especially through advertising, through marketing, breeds commercialism, convinces us to buy a new phone, even if our old phone is perfectly good, for example, or to purchase things that we can't afford to try to live up or match our peers in some way. Makes us want to buy stuff even when we don't need to, right? Right. Then another negative quality is that in being an institution, we can think about how media can work in conspiracy with other institutions, particularly if you don't have a separation between media messages and, for example, government or for big business, and how that can shape the messages in a negative way to not give people kind of a less bias. And note that media is always biased. Media messages, all messages are biased, and that's something we will keep talking about, but shape kind of the perspectives that we get, right? Keeping it real with a coffee drink here. Okay. And then I'm going to introduce two concepts here that you'll definitely need to know. We'll keep talking about the digital divide, which is going to be the gap between people who can access technology and those who cannot. All right. And then another term is called the knowledge gap. And that's the gap between people who understand how to use technology and those who cannot. Right. And I would say right now, especially with all the discussions about reopening schools and offering different ways for people to connect digitally, that we have seen an amplification of the digital divide, that it's never been more obvious, this gap between both those who know how to access and those who can use it. Particularly with socioeconomic access with the digital divide, we tend to stereotype with age groups, with the knowledge gap, but it certainly can cross over. And sometimes it's geographic too. If you're in a really rural area, you might not be able to have great internet access, for example. But I do really think that this cartoon captures one of the major issues that we're having, that we're seeing present itself with the digital divide. And then finally, the last argued negative quality is this one that I call think of the children, that we've been hearing for a very long time, stretching all the way back to debates about comic books, which is that media messages, at least particular media messages, can be bad, or genres can be bad because they might make us dumber or more violent or more sexual, right? And it depends, again, what we're talking about in terms of the media message, in terms of the audience, how vulnerable or susceptible the audience member is, and the circumstances presented in the moment. So we can absolutely kind of explain these different things, but it's definitely a broad generalization that we have that argues against kind of the role of media messages in society, right? And at this point, I will stop for our intro to media messages, and I will see you next time. And now we have the awkward part where I'm stopping the recording. So stop share, stop the recording. All right. Goodbye.